Now, one senior defence guy I was speaking to this afternoon said that as the British government struggled with how to raise defence spending, they should never forget, quotes, the Americans will be watching like hawks. On that note, let's turn to Donald Trump's former Deputy National Security Advisor, Victoria Coates, now Vice President for National Security at the Heritage Foundation. Victoria, great to have you back on the show. The Prime Minister in the House of Commons today kind of brushed aside what Donald Trump had said about him being nothing like Winston Churchill and said the special relationship was terribly deep, very, very strong, and we shouldn't judge it by the individual words of a president at one time or another. Do you think he was being a little bit over-optimistic?
Well, Andrew, great to see you. I think that, this has not been a great weekend for the special relationship. I think everyone in the United States was deeply disappointed by the restrictions Prime Minister Starmer put on the use of our bases in Diego Garcia, for example, on Cyprus and in the UK itself, only for defensive maneuvers. I think that was unnecessary. I think it was appeasement towards Iran, which is not going to work. And he is also not doing himself any favors with these remarks in the House of Commons today. I agree with Baroness Ashton. I mean, this is not enough for defense spending. 2.5 by 2027 isn't enough because the United States is going to need Europe to take care of Europe going forward.
So this is not just a momentary irritation in Donald Trump's mind. It's about the nature of the relationship between the UK and the US and the ability of Britain to be able to hold its end up when it comes to a dangerous world.
I would say it is about the very feckless policies of a specific prime minister. President Trump is an Anglophile. He has businesses in England and, is very, very fond of the United Kingdom. So this is not a reflection on how he sees the UK, but a reflection that he is deeply concerned by the condition of the British armed forces. He is concerned that these investments are not being made. And as I said, our primary challenge is China. And if we are the ones who are going to have to take on the People's Republic of China, we for sure are going to need Europe to be able to take on Russia. And so that's where we stand right now. And it's very, very disturbing to Americans to have Europeans, going to The Hague, making pledges at NATO summits, but then not following through on them.
You call the Prime Minister here feckless. Do you think there's any way back for him into Donald Trump's affections? Or do you think he's made his choice now, and that's it?
No, I've seen President Trump, reverse course on these kinds of relationships. He knows how important the U.S.-UK alliance is, and he has gone out of his way over the course of the first year of his second term to make this work. And I actually thought that first visit in the Oval Office in January of last year of 2025 was going to be a disaster, and it actually went great. That's when the Prime Minister brought the invitation from King Charles, very well received. We had the second state visit. This can work, but not if Prime Minister Starmer is behaving the way he has over the last 3 days.
Can I ask for your view about where the end game in all of this could be? Because I've just been looking through the reports about who might be taking over as supreme leader in Iran now. And the key character seems to be Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the previous Ayatollah. And, he has just lost his mother, his father, his wife, his sister, his brother-in-law, and his niece. He's very close to the IRGC. This, if anything, is going to be an even more anti-Western leader. So how long does this go on? Do we just keep decapitating one after another until we get somebody we can tolerate?
Well, that does seem to be something of a pattern here. Mojtaba also was wounded in the first attack, and so I'm not sure I would give him very long in terms of life expectancy on the ground in Tehran. But also important, yes, he's close to the IRGC, but he's deeply unpopular. He's known to be extremely corrupt. The Iranian people are sick of that, of the mullahs and their offspring lining their pockets with all of the revenues from oil and gas, while they are literally starving. They're running out of food. They're running out of cash. So it may not be the United States or Israel who takes him out.
It may be somebody else entirely. President Trump said a couple of days ago that he had in mind acceptable leaders to take over in Iran, but unfortunately most of them were dead, and then the second lot were dead as well. Is there any sense in Washington about who might take over and be acceptable?
Well, I think the other thing the president has said, though, is that this also needs to be something that's coming from the Iranian people themselves, that he is not as interested in what we would think of as regime change in terms of imposing somebody from the outside or imposing a system from the outside. I think we've learned that lesson from Iraq. We're not terribly good at that. I think his goal is to neutralize what he judged to be an intolerable threat to the United States and, by the way, to our allies in the form of the Islamic Republic. And so, he is systematically going through and neutralizing that threat, the missiles, the nuclear program, the regional proxies. And so that no longer is a problem for the American people. But he's also said, this is going to be the optimal opportunity for the people of Iran to take back their government. And so we'll see if they seize that.
Victoria, final question. Looking at the markets, there's a certain sort of calm beginning to spread through some of them, at least, probably driven by a sense that this is not going to go on forever. And there are also reports that the numbers of Iranian missiles hurling out of Iran have come down substantially. They may be running out of missiles. Do you see this as a conflict with only a few days or weeks to go rather than months and months?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what the trajectory is now. Of course, that can always change. And we are seeing spectacular attempts by the Iranians to hit Turkey, for example, or our consulate in Dubai or our embassy in Riyadh. That is a problem. That's bad. We have to guard against it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I think they're down about 75% from where they started, and they started at a level that was lower than they were firing during the 12-day war. So they are running out of capacity. And the United States is just getting more capacity because as we've degraded their missile defense systems, we now don't have to use entirely stealth aircraft over Iran. We can use whatever aircraft we want, and that expands our ability to hit targets.
I'd like to get a military perspective on what's been going on from General Sir Richard Shireff, the former Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Europe and author of War with Russia. Richard, thank you very much indeed for coming on this show. Can I start off by asking how long you think this is going to go on for in what we call a kinetic, that's a bangs and explosions kind of way? Because it does seem that the Iranians are beginning to run out of missiles.
Your previous guest made that pretty clear, but I suspect this thing will run on much longer than anticipated. It may be that the Iranians are running out, are running short of ammunition. But what is missing completely from any discussion coming from the other side of the Atlantic is any clarity of strategy, any clarity of end state, or, it seems, any understanding of the impact of what they're doing on the minds of the Iranian people. Because if they haven't thought that through, and it looks as if they haven't, they are most likely to be pushing the moderate secular Iranians into the arms of the extremists and the hardliners.
Yeah.
And I would highlight particularly in that respect the assassination of Khamenei. I mean, it may have sounded great on American networks and in Israel, but the reality is that Khamenei was not just the Iranian head of state. He was a religious symbol. He was a religious symbol for worldwide Shiites. And by assassinating him, he is now effectively a martyred saint. And that is, frankly, about as subtle as murdering the Pope on the steps of St. Peter's. And the Americans need to have thought all this through, and the fact that they haven't, I think, is a real worry, a real indicator that this thing could well turn into something like Iraq to the power of 10.
Richard, I'd like to follow through on that because it's a very interesting point. Hasn't been made enough, I don't think. So Machaba, his son, is, we are told, likely to take over. But as I was saying to Victoria Coates, he's just lost his mother, his father, his wife, and most of the rest of his family. And he was already a hardliner. So this is not going to be a more pro-Western regime if that's what happens. And then you think of the sinking of this ship today. I think 87 bodies, the Sri Lankans say, have been recovered, but there's about 150 people missing in total. That's the kind of thing that the Iranians are never going to forget or forgive, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, let's put this ship sinking into perspective. It's a tactical operation, as have been all the bombing and the thumping of Iranian facilities and the umpteen thousands of missions and sorties that have taken place. Tactics are all very well, but unless they are linked to a clear strategy, they're frankly counterproductive or can be counterproductive. And that's my point. No strategy, and yet again, an American president who has embarked on a war of choice, a war of hubris, without any thought of a clear end state. And I think that is something we've got to be very, very leery about. And I would also push back against your previous guest's assumption that Trump has only got a whistle and the British come to his heel.
Well, on that again, Prime Minister, very, very clear today again, he was not going to take us into a war of aggression unless he was clear there was a legal basis for it. He felt there wasn't a legal basis for it. He argues you can't impose democracy by throwing missiles at people, and he was going to have no part of it. Given what you've said, do you think he's right? Do you think we are well out of this?
I think he is right, but I would also just add one point, which is that our hands are in the mangle now. I mean, it's all very well saying that Americans can use British bases for defensive measures. Frankly, defensive, offensive, there's no distinction. It's war. And that will be perceived by the Iranians as siding with the Americans. For my money, I think Britain should be coming together with other middle powers, Canada, Australia, Germany, France, Italy, other Europeans, to protect our own interests. We've got to protect our bases, we've got to protect our people, and we've got to support our allies, such as the Gulf states who are getting thumped by Iranian missiles. But we do not want to get involved with the sort of gung-ho craziness of Trump and Hegseth, which is going to lead to, I think, to a very, very prolonged, nasty state of affairs. And it's already caused chaos, and it will continue to cause chaos.